I'm Mike Watson. I'm the Chief Information Officer for the Commonwealth of Virginia. We're all trying to kind of find the best spot for where AI is going to fit. I think government is uniquely positioned to be able to take some really great advantage of some of these tools that are coming out. We have a lot of process and structure in place, and we built a lot of that over the years. The ability to integrate some of the AI components into the way that our processes work is going to be, a major efficiency driver for the Commonwealth as a whole. We're excited about what some of those, kind of opportunities look like. But anywhere that it ends up being any analysis or review of information, that's a lot of what we do. When we look at permitting, when we look at, statistics about our healthcare and other things like that, affordability and understanding what all that means, we have now more powerful tools to be able to do that analysis, draw those conclusions more quickly, and then hit our objectives and help our citizens. So the age-old tale, right, of security and usability and innovation, right? It's always a little bit of friction when we end up doing those things, especially the new and unknown. And I think AI specifically is testing a lot of that, right? Because we don't necessarily know all the different attack vectors and such that are out there. We know how to do security. We've been doing it, for the longest time. I've grown up in the field. It's been interesting to kind of watch it evolve, and we have it down pat pretty well. We understand what the basics are, what the fundamentals and structures look like in order to successfully protect our data. However, anytime we introduce a brand new tool, it shifts the way that our attack vectors are coming in and what new and creative solutions that folks, come up with. Additionally, the efficiency gains aren't only going to happen on the good guy side, right? On the bad guy side, all of a sudden we have these new capabilities and pieces that are going to drive different types of responses from us. So this concept of increased speed and need for response speed is going to be a pretty big one. Also, some of the tools that we have used in the past, like the one I always like to talk about is phishing, right? We have trained users for years to look for bad spelling, things that look bad in the grammar and everything else, and say you can identify it by looking at it. And you can't anymore, right? Because the AI, software and technology is able to reproduce these things in a way that looks very real to a normal user. And we don't have a good way, to sort of train the user to protect against that. Now, the good news is, like I said, we can use some of the AI stuff to protect ourselves at the same time and look for, weird patterns or weird types of emails that may be out of place still, or things that are at least high likelihood to be phishing types of, content. But it still makes our job harder because we have to adjust and apply these, in a way different scenario than we're used to. Data is king for all of us, right? Like, it is the backbone of IT and business, right? The more data we have, the better conclusions we make, the better we can help and service whoever our, audience may be. And data protection is where in the security space especially, we focus a lot of our efforts. Right? The closer we can get our security controls to the data, the better off and more protected we are across the board. So that data level, protection piece is kind of core to the way that our technology is moving, right? As we distribute our technology out, these AI models, the cloud computing, all of that is more and more distributed outside of our own organizations, just because it's very difficult to run data centers and everything else in today's world. It's very expensive. It's way more efficient to end up using shared resources, which means while we used to be able to do things like draw a box around our data and say no one can actually physically access it, now we have to draw the virtual box around our data. And as we get new tools and new structures, it becomes more and more important to figure out how to draw that at that logical level and make sure that we are as close to that data as possible so that we can put it anywhere without worrying about it getting exposed. Coordination is king whenever there's an emergency, right? We see this on the physical side, right? When we've got hurricanes and everything else. It isn't any different on the cyber side or the technology side. When we have outages or when we have cyber attacks or anything else, it's really important to understand who your partners are, how it is that you're going to respond, where the business needs to function, where we need to prioritize bringing things back online. All of that stuff is all preparedness, right? We have to make sure that we're drilling. We have to make sure that we understand, what is important for us to be able to run. And it's not always going to be the same, right? Just because, depending on what cycle of the year we are, especially in government, right? In November, we've got elections. In the spring, we have other events going on. There are times when the DMV is really important that must be up and running. I mean, like always. But we have these different cycles that happen, and it's really important that folks understand what continuity of government looks like, when is it that continuity is required, in order for us to function. So we do a lot to make sure that we are prepped. We have an emergency operations plan that spans the Commonwealth. We have coordinators at all organizations to understand how our flow goes back and forth in the case that any one organization is disrupted. We have technology components that are there for disaster recovery and high availability in the case that we lose anything. So we spend a lot of time making sure this stuff works. One of the things I say all the time is that government has to be up when everything else isn't, right? Because that's what we need to be able to do to function as a society. That doesn't mean that we have to have every single function up, but those things that are core to the way that we work, our law enforcement capabilities, some of our emergency response capabilities must be functioning when everything else isn't. And we keep that close, and we make sure that that is part of the way that we operate. So being with the organization for as long as I have, and being at the Commonwealth for so long, I think I've got some interesting insight and understanding about just the way that both our citizens interact with our agencies and our agencies interact within government. I've spent most of my career in public service and understand where a lot of the connection points are and what can be done to sort of streamline and address some of those areas. I want to take some time to work on that. I think we're uniquely positioned to be able to take advantage of some of the AI capabilities to help actually streamline a lot of those items. There are some new technologies that have kind of recently coming out that are going to make that a little bit easier to manage as well. And then I think when we start talking about concepts of strategy and what basically the technology age is going to look like in the next 10 years, I want to try to make sure that we're prepared and ready for that. Now, none of us have a crystal ball, but we all see the writing on the wall with the AI piece. You look at the market, you understand where the investments are. You go to any conference and AI is all over the place, which is great. But I think a lot of that happens because we don't necessarily know 100% the best way to apply it to our organizations. We have to be thoughtful and plan for this, because whether we like it or not, it is coming. Some folks I know really struggle with it. Some people are all on board. You kind of have both ends of the spectrum, and we try to be measured in the middle and say, hey, this is what we're looking to introduce and where we think it's going to actually add a lot of value to the organization. I'm excited about being able to help there in that AI space. And then of course, we have our own infrastructure sort of destiny to set. We do this every 10 years or so. We hit the reboot button on the way that it is that we're actually running our infrastructure services and what it looks like in the technology space over the next 10 years. And we're actually in the middle of doing that now. So what those technologies are going to look like and what kind of new services and sort of agile structure that we're able to bring to the table is all things I'm excited about seeing and doing with the agency. I get very excited about the parts of the future. So my background's in computer science, right? Like I was, while I didn't do a ton of code, I had to learn all of the different code. It wasn't my favorite thing to do. However, like the ability to make the systems do what I wanted to do and to be able to leverage that to do things that are creative and helpful was always something that I enjoyed as part of that particular topic area. What I think is really exciting is we've democratized the capability to tell the computers to do what we want. Right now, that is simultaneously awesome and scary because while my son may tell it to do something that is fun and interesting, somebody else may not necessarily have their best intentions at heart. So it does, it's a double-edged sword. But the ability for us to end up having regular users make the systems do complex things that we just couldn't even think to have done even 5 years ago is really exciting. The ability to say I need a program that turns this thing from purple to yellow used to be a investment and now it's a keyboard sentence, right? That change is such a dramatic shift to the humans and the people that are doing the work day to day. The ability to get these things to work in a way that they've never had the capability before is going to change the way that we work significantly. And I know there's a lot of people that are really worried about job loss and everything else tied to it. It is something that we have to figure out how to navigate in any industry that whenever any technology shift is coming. However, the ability and capability that's being brought to the table, I'm one of those believers that's going to eventually increase jobs and things are going to actually just shift on the way that we're doing things. I think the computer science folks and those people that are in the technology space need to learn how to adopt and integrate some of the AI components into the way that we do our daily jobs. There is so much, we're just on the edge of what a lot of this stuff is able to do. And people are still just learning and thinking about new and creative ideas and the way to apply it, as well as even how we can push our systems and push the boundaries of the systems that we've got today to do even more than what they're currently doing. So I think we're just at the edge of it. It's super exciting. I can't kind of wait to see what comes next. So we'll catch up next year and be able to see more.